starter and board the battle bus.
The hour is upon us. Game one set, almost ready to kick things off for the day here at Takata, but there is bound to be a handful of surprises, probably some pleasant ones along the way, but I think more so I want to keep in mind some of the upsets that we might be looking at, some of the teams that could potentially be trickling into that last chance qualifier. Anything could happen, so let's get into it. Game one's ready to go.
Good news is you don't have to wait long. This is gonna be a fun one. I'm incredibly excited to see how today pans out. It's gonna be tough for a lot of these trios, but it just makes it that much more exciting. Like they were mentioning on the desk, Demon's Domain looked like it was potentially gonna be contested, but it should be on-con for Queasy this time around. However, there will still be some contestations, and we won't have to wait long to see how they pan out.
It's almost weird to think about Queasy being uncontested for once. Marvick probably happy though to be getting the better end of this exchange here at Canyon Crossing. Some very early action, and having that initial elimination's always good to just put the odds in your favor. Granted, that is going to leave Hammy and Kavik in a bit of a precarious situation here at Takata. They got to be really careful. They could just look to try and fully bail out from Canyon, but they're sticking around. They still feel like they might be able to get something going here.
The problem with Canyon Crossing, as another player is going to go down playing in a 3v1 and looking like it's only a matter of time, but for ABC, the good news is if you're able to finish the engagements quickly, it's ideal, because like I was mentioning previously, Canyon Crossing is in between two elevations, basically. It's kind of like in the middle of this river, so if you do end up getting third-partied, you're not going to have that positional advantage, so it's good to finish them up quickly. Taking a look at Mongrel now, having both Mongrel's trio and Savage's trio in the lobby is going to make for some interesting moments, as now Pump Power. In terms of positioning, Mongrel's trio currently has the better spot, but without any picks yet, it's still a 3v3.
Without any mats, Keto might have to fall back here just to have a better fighting odds later on. Mongrel, though, this is a huge fan favorite, and Levin's already kind of touched on it. There is a good chunk of pressure kind of lying on not even just Mongrel's shoulders, but I think it extends to the rest of his team, because for Hydra and Keto as well, they're also looking to have that resurfacing into the competitive conversation. They're all veterans, but they've been outside of that landscape for a bit. Moneymaker and Tidy have a whole slew of problems on their hands here, though. Lost F9, but might still be able to turn things back around. Moneymaker, though, he's going to be knocked. It's going to leave Tidy in a one-man hold-it-down situation, but Peshka, Fury, both just trying to take their separate angles. They want to go for the double revive on Faluka, but Tidy just looking to break through. He knows how incredibly low everybody is, but has to finally pressure, just challenge outright. A couple of seriously harmed players here in Fury, but the third-party indirect Peshka wrapping around too. It's just unfavorable odds.
Good job from Peshka, though. He saw both of his teammates were, I believe, under 30 HP, so you want to kind of trade off damage in these engagements when you have the player advantage. If you do have that bit of shield, you don't want your teammates taking those peaks when they're just one shot away from getting knocked. So good job to Peshka for playing a bit aggro there and taking that fight while his teammates didn't have to take any risks. But for Moneymaker and his trio, I mean, I talked about it earlier. I think For9 tweeted that wherever the game one winners were landing, it's where they're going to drop next. But look at this. Titans got me scared for a second, thinking they were going to go down, but I'm clearly mistaken, as Veno just was dropped down low. But if you look, they already have 3 eliminations, not a single problem in sight.
It could have been a serious issue if Veno had actually been knocked, but even then, Vico and Flixie seemingly full control of that situation. You know, a chance to kind of watch back where things went south, though, for Mappy's team, and sure enough, Cheatin' and Mappy, they just got overwhelmed from 2 separate directions. Just really good supportive measures there out of Vico and Flixie once they recognized that Veno was in a little spot of trouble there. But nothing to really delay, and that's something else that I think a lot of people are kind of keeping an eye out here for on Chap, Savage, and Reason is just having a smooth and consistent early game.
And that they should be able to, being uncontested at Resistance. The only thing they really have to focus on is, you know, their route. But the good part about being uncontested is if you put in enough practice, which they definitely have, you should be able to have an efficient route for not only Surge, but also loot and hard materials as the day goes on. You can see people already starting to kind of make their little Surge ramps on that side of the map. So don't think too much fighting will go on, but definitely shots back and forth.
Big stockpiling of resources taking place right now, though, on the bridge here at Shining Span. Cammy, Ari, and iDrop are definitely aiming to just secure that grand finals appearance. They need it more than ever, Cammy especially, so keep your eyes peeled for what they get up to. I'd imagine that they're aiming to get it done as quickly as possible. Nebs, Pink, and Kiro across the map. They're just trying to continue stringing together some additional Surge damage. You already got one elimination there for Kiro. So even with having those early encounters, teams are going to constantly stay on the hunt there for that additional damage to Kata. We've seen how high those numbers can actually scale.
Oh yeah, I'm wondering who that elimination was. Like, once again, similar to the previous major, they have Akira, Kurama, and Werex right south of them, so if they didn't get 3 full elims, maybe it was just some early game shots back and forth, but we talked about it earlier. Demon's Domain, Queasy, Murstache, and Swizzy. No problem in the early game. Best POI for themselves. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them take home game 1. We know how this trio likes to play.
I think what I'm really going to keep an eye out for in the end game is how height is actually managed and who actually takes over, because we've seen a lot of teams kind of trying to put that emphasis onto the high ground plays, but it's hard to maintain throughout the end game. Cringe, just kind of walking it down onto Garcia. That just, you know that there's strength in numbers, and for a lot of these teams that are just kind of roaming, doing soft roamings at that, not really wanting to stray too far away from who they're playing with, you always want to make sure that you can have that defensive backup just in case.
Talking about backups, the backup drop spot from Podosai and his trio here by Rolling Blossoms Farm. In terms of loot, could be better, but at least, you know, they had a safe off spawn, and if Queasy does end up qualifying with this trio at Demon's Domain, that's the trio that you'd expect to go take that drop spot from them. As we look on over to the island, Floki looking like they're kind of battling for it. 3 limbs already, though. Yeah, not too much battling.
Bit of a scrappy start there, though, for Floki's team. That's evident just in the elims that they've already built up. But top of Rift Island, a lot of teams now in second zone just trying to really settle into some of their Surge bases. We've seen how impactful the current competitive meta is, and so many teams just looking to keep that Surge threshold going strong, and it starts just with basing up into points of elevation. But that does remove, I think, a lot of the early game pressure from some teams not wanting to just completely steam things down. They know that they can take their time getting those tags from a distance.
From Shixi, though. A little scared here with the full trio roaming on in. Patience is key, but the issue is the more time you spend, the more difficult you're gonna make your game. But when you're a solo, when you have 7 builds, you really don't have a lot of options other than trying to stay up and eventually getting the reboot in. So, you know, hopefully this trio eventually kind of continues with the rotation, or Shixi finds an exit. But for now, this is not an ideal position.
Well, Voldy has 1 elimination. Not sold that they were chasing Shixi to this position here at Pomp, or just waiting to see if they had spotted out a solo, maybe looking to play for that reboot opportunity. I'll have to check back in, though, to see whether or not he actually pulls it off. Ivan, Ifrozi, and Artiste playing a little bit of that early storm tick damage, but a couple of missed grenades. Ivan's not really too stressed right now. It's a lot of focus on just the positional rotation.
Yeah, Levin was rooting this trio on, and I'm all about that wave. They've got the experience, despite the trio switch up. We'll see how they're able to manage here. Oh.
I think a key thing to keep in mind for a lot of these teams too is that some of these teams were initially preparing as if they were going to be contested in today's lobbies, Takata. And so with some of the last minute adjustments that kind of took place for most of these teams, I mean, we know that surge basing is a very prominent way to stack your surge, but then you have teams like Vico, Veno, and Flixie who just seem like they are constantly hunting down the opposition. And it's just a good old-fashioned box fight to get as much surge as they need.
Yeah. The good news about Vico, Veno, Flixie is, sometimes you'll be box fighting just for a bit of damage, but this is a trio that likes to commit to their fights. The issue is when Veno gets cracked now, his teammates are put into a bit of panic as they're forced to play a bit more defensive, allow their teammate to recuperate that HP and make sure they continue applying that pressure onto their opponents. But as Flixie's now been cracked as well, they're gonna have to be careful.
Vico's been here like a million times before. Just doing everything he can to try and close in, but he's gonna get that first elimination credit onto Flixie. Veno still relatively hurt, hasn't had a chance to fully pull back all of his white HP healed, but it's gonna be the immediate disengage. Vico, Veno, they know that Ken, Vampy, Tahi, this is a trio that's holding their own, and they are chasing them down. As soon as they got that initial elimination onto Flixie, they wanted more. This is their best chance to take out one of the leading powerhouses in this lobby. And that's just one less team to worry about in an end game. But Vico, never count him out. This is a dangerous window peek that he's got opened up here. And Ken, if he's not careful, it might be on the receiving end of it, but not a big enough tag there. Vico can't get through, but he knows Ken fully cracked. He wants to try and break through. Another teammate getting brought so incredibly low, and Veno just crouching overhead, but Chapin, Reason, Savage, they actually might step in to the fight, and Veno wants no part of this. He's just trying to create even more space.
Well, I think the job has been done, though, especially when you're playing as a duo. You have a whole trio aggressing you. You don't necessarily have to win the 3v2. You just have to do enough damage for your opponents to realize, okay, maybe we shouldn't commit to this. We've already used so many mats. We've already used so many heals. Let's just, take our elimination and go from there. But like you said, they might be continuing on the hunt as they see that Savage trio has now gone away. Quick replay on what actually happened to Flixie. He was a bit split up, but with Dahi going right through the box, little blurriness from the med mist ended with Flixie's demise.
A little bit of a double-edged sword there with the visual problems. Sometimes it'd be hard to keep track of where everybody's at in those Memphis grenades. Nice job from Clownski, though. Some great tags there. Podosai, art skill, nice squeeze. Just trying to keep a low profile now, fully aware of the fact that there's a surge base not too far from us, and they don't want to find themselves getting pinned down in the same spot. Very easy for congestion to start pooling up on that southern section of the map too, so teams definitely trying to keep the flow as loose as they can right now.
Looks like reboot came through from Vico, Veno, Flixie, but not a lot of shields to spare, as they're gonna have to fully commit to an engagement here potentially. Superman Sprite coming to use. Great for destroying builds, not as great for actually eliminating players, but as long as you're able to kind of burn your opponent's mats, even just open up angles for shots. Issue is now, looking at the zone here, they do have enough time. It's not ticking enough to be incredibly dangerous, but at the same time, you don't really want to take these risks inside of the zone. But even if they don't, it's going to be a tough match to come back from. Now behind on loot, behind on mats, behind on positioning. But if any trio is going to be able to make a comeback from it, it's going to be Vico, Veno, Flixie. They're going to take those fights, and all it really need is one good one.
There are so many teams hovering Supernova Academy, and you have to remember, they all still need to make the same rotate into zone. but this delay now, it could prove to be extremely problematic for Veno, Vico, and Flixie. Even with the reboot success on Flixie, they've now been held for much longer inside of the storm than what they ever would have initially anticipated. Takada, that could definitely play a big part. Storm sickness is really what I'm thinking about as the game goes later and later and drags on, because they're likely going to have to keep playing from those storm positions, just working on recovering those early assets they lost.
Depending on what position your trio's in, it can be better or worse to kind of play purposefully on that congested side, where you can kind of be on the defensive end of all the trios like Vico, Veno, Flixie rotating in late. However, on the contrary, if you already got your surge early on, didn't have too many problems, then you can go deeper into zone. But for Prism here, it looks like they are low on hard materials, so something might not have went their way earlier on, but we'll see how they're able to play it.
Following back up with Nebs, Pink, and Kiro and their journey through this first lobby, tagged up a bit, and as they make their entrance towards edge of zone here at Utopia City. They've got a good amount of materials though, Takada. It's largely just about setting up, clearing out space. They want to be the ones kind of holding teams on the edge of zone, but they know with that surge base not too far away from Mongrel, Keto, and Hygel, head on a swivel type of behavior. You can never really let up your guard. Other teams, meanwhile, stuck inside the bases they've created here. A little bit north of Foxy, Floodgate, Noms, and Mystic. They recognize Kiri, Prism, Casper, taking a good chunk of the lobby focus right now, but net neutral with their position right now.
Ooh.
Need to recover some shield. Yeah, this is bad news bears right now for Vico and Veno.
Good shots though from Vico. It's going to be enough to get reason to play a little safer. Issue is, with more than enough heals, now once again, the 3v2. They've done enough damage, but they're on the hunt for loot. If you look at Veno's materials, it's only a matter of time. I don't know if this is a trio you want to be fighting, but this actually might be a golden opportunity. If an engagement begins, it could be a good opportunity to join the party.
They're spending so much time. They have to win this fight now. Shaco's gonna get knocked. Storm Surge ticks clearly the issue. That's the big reason why Savage's team is being so heavily aggressed into. But now Veno, Vico, recognizing that the third party's there, they want to see if they can turn this in their favor. Potentially even the odds here if they can find a knock onto one of the members from Savage's trio. But Savage closing in onto Cora, not going to allow that opportunity to go to waste. And with 3 eliminations intact, Reason, Chap, Savage, they're just gonna take their goods and pretty much bounce. They don't have a reason to stick around for Veno and Vico.
Yeah, their main focus now is rotating the zone safely while conserving as many heals and materials as possible. It's gonna be all about positioning. Quite a difficult rotate with the amount of trios that are already gonna be at the zone. And if you have people like Peshka and his trio kind of looking at you taking shots, it's going to be even worse. Sometimes you can purposefully take some shots of trios in front of you to force them to build and then use those materials that they already placed to kind of follow them into zone. But Peshka this time around is going to try and play the completely safe route and use a bit of environmental cover to make it into zone.
Smart truce there. It's like kind of the unspoken one on those rotates. The reason being, though, is that a lot of traffic really picking up around the edge of zone, and Pink's team, bit of trouble here, but overhead, it's Atreides, Hano, really feeling the burn right now. They've got to make a decision, and they got to make it quick. They can't just sit here continuing to tank these Storm Surge ticks. Paul Atreides, the last member from his team, and unless he comes up with an insane shot, Kiro, Nebs, Pink, they could have had that one, but they'd rather focus on the positional rotation. Takada, seasoned competitors, they know better than to get caught up. What's one elimination matter where you can get plenty more if you have a good spot that you're in?
Especially in this portion of the match. Looking from the top-down view, seems like Veno and Vico have made it into the zone, but with 4 HP onto Veno, not too many more materials, 106 above. We know that something has to be done sooner or later. The good news is, though, zone has been pulled, and they'll have a bit more time to plan their next attack.
Oh, Veno and Vico are just doing everything they can to survive right now, Takada. You want to keep a low profile, but they know only 77 above that damage threshold, and more importantly still, they just have to get a refresh. The Siphon, even the hero rank up, would just do volumes for where they are currently at HP-wise. But that opportunity, it's going to be slim. They're not going to have many chances to get open shots onto the competitors in this lobby. They're really just waiting for some of these other teams to get a move on first, but Cammy, Harry, and iDrop elevated themselves and just kind of looking back, trying to keep their composure. Well, they've got a fixated position on height. It's just gonna... Oh man, iDrop just punished immediately, but lucky for him, we are in a landscape where it's a little bit easier to just lobby focus out teams like Veno instead. And it just keeps getting worse, Takada. I feel like the longer we watch,
the worse it gets.
The more difficult it's going to be. And yeah, there's no defensive measures left to take. Storm Surge, everything that could have gone wrong in this one definitely did. But opens the doorway now for another team to try and take over. And Reason, Savage, Chap, big part of the problem there for Veno's team this game. Now looking to have a conversion, but Cammy, Harry, iDrop, despite their good positioning, they haven't managed to maintain their surge.
Looking in terms of height, that 7th to 8th zone is kind of crucial, because if you do end up pulling towards the side of the zone it's moving to, it's going to give you kind of that opportunity to hold on to it. But we've seen time and time again, if you hold on too early, a few unlucky zones, a few double pulls in the furthest direction could be enough to use all your materials up. So a lot of success comes from taking height a bit later on. With Queasy in the lobby though, height is never going to be safe, as so far 207 above, good amount of materials, looking like they have the opportunity to make a solid endgame performance here.
It's not often you'll see Queasy at eye level with everyone else, but we are just waiting for the doorway to essentially open up here. Mustache, Queasy, Swizzy, Misform gonna start to make their way towards that secondary height position. Keto, Haijo, and Mongrel look as if they're trying to take over the high ground, but with the way that the zone is starting to pull towards the natural elevation here on this mountain span, Haijo, Keto, and Mongrel, they're going to be some first to move towards it thanks to these dash sprites, but at the same time, Takada, they've got to keep an eye out for other teams with the same intentions.
Yeah, Clownski up above, looking to see if they can hold it. This is a perfect zone if it ends up pulling back to the mountains, which it sort of did, so could be a huge opportunity to hold on. 104 above, but now shots are going to be connected through. The issue is for the players down below, you have to plan, even if it doesn't pull towards the mountain, if it's possible that it can pull towards the mountain, you have to be prepared on how you're actually going to rotate that, whether it be mist form, dashes, anything conserved for these more difficult rotates. As Cammy, Chari, and iDrop now, great elevation change, getting closer in.
But not many shields there for Cammy. They're gonna need a little bit more to work with. So many teams, though, that are getting trapped inside of these lower layers as the zone just continues pulling up this mountain face, kind of handling the dirty work for the lobby. Savage and Chap, they've lost Reason along the way. iDrop, no shield. Harry, no shield. And Cammy, incredibly low. But they're just gonna have to go for the fight. Even with being above on the surge damage threshold, they need a refresh more than anything right now. And iDrop, he's not gonna get a chance. He's gonna be collected along the way here. And Cammy trying to see if he can resync now with Harry. They're gonna use their last dash sprite to refresh, but they are stuck in the lower layers, and there is no way that they're going to get out anytime soon here. Savage and Chap doing what they can to try and stay on an uncontested layer, but A lot of traffic flow surrounding them.
A lot of placement points to be earned in these final moments of the end game, but Cammy is going to be eliminated. Chap and Savage continuing as a duo to stay ahead of the zone. A good amount of materials. They cannot fall down into the hands of a full trio right now as Neb's trying to take angles where they can find them as the zone is going to pull back.
But Nebs, Kiro, Pink, they're just taking care. They're shooting at everybody's toes. Queasy in the misform. He's just flying around, hoping that nobody spots out the fact that he doesn't have any builds left to his name. He is isolated, playing on that backside. Chap relying on this Meminist grenade to do what it can for his HP bar, but dashing every which way. Still hasn't been picked apart. Waiting to see if he can find an opportunity for a possible refresh, a little bit of siphon, anything. And Queasy, same exact mentality. This is feast or famine now in the low ground, and Queasy, he's doing everything to build up just one more placement, but he might get stuck, he might get caught. Can he break through every single pre-existing build? And finally, he's too exposed. A trio in the lower layer is gonna take care of him. And now Savage stuck in this midway position.
Meanwhile, Clownski and his trio up and above the perfect zone for them to not be contested a single time on height as it keeps just going back and forth on the mountain. Devastating rotation for the players down below, but a miracle for the trio in the clouds. Issue is they are running a bit low on mats, unable to find as many refreshes, but Nebs, 3 HP, 8 actually in a dream. Kiro trying to build above. You cannot get left behind when the zone continues to elevate. But I was talking about it, the high ground retake, it might be coming through, but it seems to be a 1v3 almost, as it's still looking pretty clear.
Boise has so many chug jugs prepared to play this heal off. Savage just trying to do what he can to stay alive. Has angle builds. Big shot though for Savage. Gonna connect. That's the refresh he needs, but he can't get to it. He can't finish for the elimination. He never gets that siphon. Werix now fully dropped as the mountain face starts to fall off here following the zone. Clownski still staying alive, staying ahead, breaking down now, trying to see who these last remaining players are in these lower layers. Scary Sean, Werix, can they make it? But Gabig's gonna be the last one to drop to the bottom floor here, and he finds Scary Sean. The connection has been found, and that is everything for our first lobby winners.
What a tough zone to kick off the day, but in the end, it was Clownways and Gabix that were able to hold on to that height when it mattered the most. Down below, all the players fighting for their life to just stay inside of the zone, but once they closed it out, they were able to secure their spot in the major finals. Congratulations to Clownways and Gabix for playing it by the book and taking height when it mattered the most.
They were really just one of the first teams, too, to actually commit fully towards height. They had a really good read on how these zone pools were just going to work in their favor. And Takata, it's not an easy job necessarily to keep a firm grasp over the high ground, but when you get the job done in this way, Clownski, Ways, Gabix, we will see you in the Major 3 Grand Finals. But for right now, Frankie, Levin, Minnie, what do you got for us?
Thank you very much, guys. That zone was so punishing. I was thinking, which one would you hate more, the water zone or the mountain? And after watching that, I think you've got to go with mountain on this one, Levin. How amazing was it that Gabix's trio were able to hold onto that high ground so successfully?
Well, I mean, I think the zone's part of why, right? It was the easiest sort of situation for them when the zone is that difficult. When it is that difficult, though, when you have teams and it's pulling back through where it just came from as well, on the mountain, up and down, people investing so much, they are allowed to save so many mats more than what they typically would have. So really, really nice game from them. They did well to take high in the first place, right? So credit to them, but hey, I mean, it's going to be good to see them in the finals. I'll be happy with that one, Minnie.
Yeah, super excited to see them in finals. I think it's a little bit of a surprise. I think we would have expected a little bit of a different team upon height in our very first game. But yeah, very, very treacherous zone for all those down below. But as you mentioned, Levin, it is very, very nice when the zone, I think it was zone 11, zone 10, and even 12, I think, was just pulling all over their pre-existing builds. So they didn't have to waste all those materials. You could sort of see it pulling back. And if you do establish that high ground really early on in these mountainous zones, you often do find a lot of success. So ultimately, it is about who can do that first. And these guys just put themselves in the perfect position. A little bit of a wobble, I guess, because one of them, it was Gabix actually that lost a lot of HP, but they were able to sort of dispatch of that solo high ground take. But ultimately, pretty straightforward stuff from them.
Yeah, that's, you know, regardless of the season, the meta, whatever, like we see wins like that on FNCS all the time, right? Mountain zones like that where you're the early height team and you can just hold it from there on out.
Well, it will be the only game that we see Aways, Gabix and Kansky playing today because they have booked their spot in the Major 3 finals next weekend with that golden ticket victory royale. But after the break, we'll be discussing the rest of the lobby. See you in a bit.